People have been questioning some of John Harbaugh's decisions from Thursday night against the Cincinnati Bengals, and Harbaugh defended those decisions. We talk about that and so much more coming up on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And now the #1 sports podcast network. Appreciate everybody for being here today, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day. And thank you so much, whether you're an everyday or a first-time listener, or if you're somewhere in the middle, for being here as we cover this Baltimore Ravens team 5 days per week plus more. We have daily Ravens coverage here, and we have a jam-packed episode today as John Harbaugh defended his decisions when it came to the offensive line and the running back spots in Thursday Night Football against the Bengals, and people have been questioning Harbaugh on those over the course of the last couple of days. Harbaugh spoke on Monday, and we'll talk about what he had to say about each of those. Harbaugh also gave some big Ravens injury updates, which we'll talk about in the second part of the show, and how those guys could factor back in if and when they're able to return. And then finally, we'll dive into a Lamar Jackson conversation because, again, his situation is one of the more polarizing in the league right now, and I think it's important to continue talking about that. I want to tell everybody and remind everyone today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Here, the Ravens are embarking on their December journey, and that'll start up with a matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers in week number 14. But John Harbaugh, he talked about some of his decisions from that Thanksgiving night loss to the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm sure we are all trying to forget, myself included, but it's important to still talk about it. So Harbaugh was asked about the offensive line decision. Obviously, the big one was putting Emery Jones in there in a rotation with Aaron Voorhees. He was first asked about how he thought Emery Jones looked in his impression. He said he thought that he played hard and showed some athleticism, some fight, some gusto. He also said he played like a rookie in a lot of ways, and there are a lot of things to clean up. He said that Emery Jones would be the first to tell you that, but he mentioned that you can't really start making those improvements until you play. He said, quote, you have to play in games to start growing in that direction, and he got a chance to do that, which is really positive. We'll just have to see going forward how much we want to continue that as we go. So not a commitment there from Harbaugh. Could go back to just Aaron Voorhees, who he replaced last week in spots, or maybe they do run a little bit more of a rotation. We'll see. Now, Harbaugh also, because a lot of people, again, were wondering, like, why not right guard? And we had heard that he was doing the left guard thing, and Harbaugh was asked if Emery Jones could get some could be in the conversation for the other guard spot at right guard. And Harbaugh said, quote, it's possible, but it's hard to do. We've had that conversation. It's a good question. It's the same question that I asked and that we asked. How viable is that? But you take a rookie and put him on both sides, you compound that curve quite a bit. So I guess Harbaugh's thought process there is, you just want to play a guy at one position, let him figure it out, especially as a rookie, instead of putting so much on that guy's plate as a rookie. So honestly, I understand that. Again, at this point, Andrew Voorhees and Daniel Falele aren't playing well. And, I think that Daniel Falele needs to be benched. But, here we are, and it still hasn't happened. I don't think it is going to happen, especially with this whole situation. And so Harbaugh was then asked about Voorhees in particular because, clearly if you're in a rotation, they don't stress you not to play a full complement of snaps. And Harbaugh said there's a step between being a starter and being an established starter kind of in this league. And he said when you're a younger player like Andrew, or a lot of guys, you want to establish yourself as a starter. And he said that he thinks he's in the process of doing that, and said he graded out highly. His numbers were good. He also mentioned Daniel Falele and said that he graded out highly too, and said there are plays both of them want back, and, said it's tough to play O-line in the league, talked about being consistent and as many upside plays. You have to have as many of those as you can and minimize a negative play. So, all that stuff going into it. So, again, I feel like with Harbaugh in the O-line, and especially with the running back, talking about some of these decisions they're making, we'll get into the running back stuff in a little bit here, but he mentioned that, the things that they've done, or at least they think they've done a really good job at over the years, is what he's talked about, and you want to build in the direction of that. It just feels like they've taken so many steps back over the course of this season with that. And so, look, I agree with getting Emery Jones in there. I don't agree with the rotations. And, Harbaugh wasn't directly asked about Falele himself. So, that was a conversation that wasn't brought up at all about why Voorhees and not Falele, but, did kind of talk about, because I have seen on social media some people saying, why don't you play him in both spots? Like Harbaugh should be doing this. Why isn't he doing this? And he defended that and said, all right, well, it's hard to do when you want to play a guy, especially a rookie, at multiple positions. And I tend to agree with Harbaugh on that, but I just think that even though Voorhees and Falele aren't playing well, like both of them aren't, they're already working him at left guard. And so that's the position that they have decided on. I think it should be right guard. And look, it should be both if we're being completely honest here, but they're not going to play Ben Cleveland. Corey Bullock also, he's not a rookie, but, he still isn't experienced. Ravens at this point just kind of have to rock with it, see what happens. And maybe they try him at right guard and prepare him there this week. And it's Falele. I don't know, but it just feels like Falele is Harbaugh's guy, or he's is not. And they're going to rotate as such because, again, it's not just a Falele problem or just a Voorhees problem. It's a little bit difficult when it's like everyone on the line in some way, shape, or form. And just for reference, over on PFF, because Harbaugh did say those guys rated out highly, Daniel Falele did grade out highly in the pass block game. He was actually the Ravens' highest rated run blocker in week 13. In the pass block game for Daniel Falele, wasn't as good. He was the Ravens' worst pass blocker. So again, it's that volatility we've been talking about for Voorhees. He ranked kind of towards the bottom in run blocking, but was fine in pass blocking. So, he was kind of rated lower on the scale, but still had a 70.8, which is fine for a pass block grade. But in the run blocking game, he was not so great. He ended up putting together, on PFF at least, a 57.9, which would have been good, or at least it was good, for third worst on the Ravens O-line behind Stanley, who had a poor game, and Linderbaum, who, he was great in the pass block, but run. Because it's like these guys are great in one aspect in these games, it feels like, but they're just terrible in another. And that's the inconsistency we're talking about. So Harbaugh did defend, playing Emery Jones at just left guard, not giving him both spots. And that was kind of his conversation with that. But then there was also the conversation about the running backs. And obviously, the big running back conversation was the snap count for Rasheen Ali, who played more snaps than Derrick Henry and Keaton Mitchell. Ali had 29, Henry 24, and Keaton Mitchell 8. And so Harbaugh was directly asked about that snap distribution for the running backs, and was asked about, is that what you, did you like the balance in that? Is that what you wanted? And Harbaugh said, no, of course. Like, those are not the numbers we want at all. He said, we want to run the ball. We're a running team, a throwing team too. And he talked about, because Derrick Henry essentially didn't play the entire second quarter. And he mentioned that it explains the lack of carries in the second quarter is they didn't have any plays in the second quarter to have a chance to even run the ball. And then he talked about, the other part of that is the number of 2-minute plays in the game for the Ravens was staggering. He said 21 2-minute plays, which is way too high. And, you have 2-minute plays at the end of the half. And then in the fourth quarters, you're trying to come back. And so in those situations, they, kind of dictate what type of running back you have on the field. And Rasheen Ali played because he was filling in for Justice Hill and was playing in that pass block role that Justice Hill has played. And again, I don't have a problem with them playing Rasheen Ali. Like, that's your replacement. That's fine. But I do think that there were opportunities earlier in the second quarter to get the run game going. Like, once you become in that, like, I don't know, like 26-14 range, like, then it does become a little bit dicey. Henry's last carry, I believe, came at the 15-second mark in the third quarter. That was the holding call on Emery Jones where he ran for 6 yards, if I'm not mistaken. I'm looking over it, because then Ali got the run and the shotgun on the next play at 9:04 in the fourth. I'm just looking over it here. Yeah, I think that Henry did not get a carry in the fourth quarter as well. And so when you're down 29-14, like you need to go 2-minute offense. If you have your designated 2-minute back, I don't think that it's right to only play Henry 24 snaps and have Ali out snap him regardless of circumstances. I mean, we saw Henry be effective in the pass game as a check down option. I think it's unfortunate the Ravens need to have a pass protection back in there a lot of these times. I mean, again, 2-minute drill dictates that. And I'm not saying that it doesn't, but on some of these plays, even if it's not Henry, one of the guys I would have loved to see more of is Keaton Mitchell. Like Willie Taggart, I talked about this on the squad show last night. Willie Taggart back in August, and who knows? I mean, we're in December now, so who knows what it is like now. But Willie Taggart said that Keaton Mitchell really developed into a better pass blocker. And so I would be curious if they would use him a little bit more in that role, because I think he just gives you a little more than Ali does. And not that Ali played poorly. I'm not trying to bash on him. I think he actually played pretty well regardless of circumstances. But, you just have these two talents in Henry and Mitchell that I don't think you're utilizing enough right now if you're the Ravens in some of these situations. And it is very situational based for Derrick Henry. Baltimore clearly doesn't view him as like a 3-down back, and, they want to use him in specific situations, but this is not the first time that there's been like Derrick Henry usage controversy. And going back to Harbaugh's point about, some of those runs at the end of the half and whatnot, some of those plays and not enough time, et cetera, et cetera. In the fourth quarter, sure. Like, we can just kind of throw that out and say, okay, yeah, whatever. But in the second quarter in particular, the Ravens, they had the Ravens were up in this game 7-6, and they had starting at 11:24 in the second, they had a 7-play, 68-yard drive that resulted in the Isaiah Likely fumble. So it would have been a touchdown, ended up not being a touchdown. So you don't get the points. On first down, incompletion to Mark Andrews. Second down, another throw to Mark Andrews. Then Lamar scrambled. Then another incompletion to Tez Walker. Then he passed it to Keaton Mitchell, who was on the field. Then the Keaton Mitchell run. So again, like you're up in that game, I think you can still establish Derrick Henry on the ground at that point. You're up in the game. That's an opportunity for me to run the ball there from the Ravens. You're early in the second quarter. Then they get the ball back with 2 minutes and 36 seconds to go. And then that is, I think, where the 2-minute stuff starts. And, you don't have Henry on the field as much. But even still, you still have the 2-minute warning. And I feel like, on that first down play, incomplete to Rashod Bateman at the 34, I think he could have run the ball there and established something. And again, there was the touchdown to Zay Flowers. It was nullified. So there were point opportunities on each of these possessions, but it's just, I think you need to be utilizing Henry a little bit more in those situations. So I think it's interesting where Harbaugh's coming from. We'll continue this conversation on the second part of the show and then dive into Harbaugh's injury updates on a couple of key players who are currently out for this Ravens team. There's also some guys who suffered some injuries in the Cincinnati game. So stay tuned. Plenty coming your way on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. And live bets is best when the game starts to shift, or maybe a receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. So over on FanDuel, obviously the Ravens and the Steelers, they're going to match up in a big Week 14 game. Right now, the Ravens are 5.5-point home favorites in this game. Huge matchup for both teams. Could dictate the AFC North if we're being honest. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your live NFL bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Moving along here on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this Tuesday edition of the show. We have 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage for you here. The regular show Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern time. We also have the bonus episodes on the weekends when there are headlines. We have Locked On Ravens watch-alongs, instant reaction shows. We have a lot of different things as well, like the Locked On Ravens squad show with myself, Sam Njoku, and former Ravens receiver Kadri Ismail. So if you want that daily Ravens coverage, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button in video form, follow along and subscribe in audio form, and be sure to turn notifications on so you know when we put out our content. But all right, let's round out our conversation about what John Harbaugh had to say about the running back controversy and things that, he could or couldn't have done, or the team could or couldn't have done. And he also talked a little bit about the, again, final stat sheet with Henry with 10 carries. Mitchell had 2 carries. And Harbaugh was asked about how it got to that point and kind of said the same stuff, kind of defended the fact that, it's not what they want, but he had a pretty good idea after the game was over because he knew how the game went. He said when you go back, look at the numbers, he said, all right, how exactly did it happen? And he said there weren't enough opportunities. And he said it wasn't like every time we were in first and second down, we were going to run the ball 100% of the time, which is fine. And he said to get to 18 to 20 runs, they'd have to run it every time on first and second down just about. And I mean, that is part of the reason too, because yes, time of possession so heavily favored Cincinnati and they weren't converting on third down the way that they needed to. Harbaugh talked about doing screens and all that stuff. And again, like the carry amounts, yes, that's bad for Henry and Mitchell. Like I think they should get more. And again, game flow dictates part of that, but also like I would love to see them utilize more screens to Derrick Henry or get Keaton Mitchell involved, or again, just have these guys as check down options like we saw with Henry, where Lamar just flips that ball to Henry and Henry does the rest. Like those are plays I'd love to see more of because it gets those guys in the open space, in the open field. And instead of having poor O-line blocking play for them, which kind of, again, then the predictability of the run game at times just has popped up, I think that gives you added avenues to utilize some of these guys' talent. So, yes, I mean, for John Harbaugh, I agree with him. You don't have to run the ball every time on first and second down. You don't want to do that because it gets too predictable, and the Ravens offense even is too predictable at times like that. But finding different ways to utilize these guys to where, yes, you want Ali on the field or Hill or whoever is your pass blocking guy, then okay, that's fine. Teams do that. Teams have that. It's very rare these days that teams have straight up bell cow running backs anymore. Henry is still one of the ones that you want to be that guy, but the Ravens have clearly shown that in certain circumstances, he's not going to be on the field. And whether we agree or disagree with that, that's just how it is. And so John Harbaugh said they needed to make more of those plays. And he said that, he was very complimentary of Rashod Ali and said that he handled it well, played the role well. He said he got the job done, pass protected well also. And so, with Justice Hill being out and, Harbaugh said that Hill is going to have a chance to come back here, it'll be Ali and then Hill. But right now with Henry, and especially like looking forward to what his role could be. And honestly, like I'm okay with them not playing Henry as much as long as he gets more run down the stretch. If you're, and again, I see people talking about, is Henry on a pitch count? Is he injured? I don't think so. And it's crazy because I think Henry should be getting more opportunities. He's one of your best players out there. I know people are talking about, is he slowing down? I just think, honestly, it's more a product of poor line play, and he's not able to get going as much. But I'm curious to see if this remains to be a trend. But hopefully, and especially against the Steelers, game flow won't be that way, and Henry will get a massive amount of carries. But again, it's not necessarily all about the carries for me. It is about the snap count. So Harbaugh, pretty confident why everything happened, and he explained it. And look, I agree with what he's saying in terms of why the carries weren't there in the fourth quarter. But early in the second quarter, I thought there were areas there when you're up in that game still to establish the run a little bit and still get these guys snaps and opportunities in the passing game, because we saw the prime example of Henry in the open field again there. So those are things that I'm just wondering about moving forward. Now, Harbaugh also had some updates on a couple of key Ravens players. Obviously, Nate Wiggins being one of them, where he said that Nate Wiggins is day-to-day. He said we'll see where he's at on Wednesday and going forward from there. So not a huge update on Nate there. It'd be tough if he missed this Pittsburgh game. It'd be even tougher if he missed the Cincinnati game. Day-to-day is an encouraging phrase to me that Harbaugh used here. But again, that's not really giving us a lot of information. Harbaugh was also asked about Tavius Robinson and Ardarius Washington. He was asked if those guys are going to be back in practice this week or if it's still too early to know. And Harbaugh said there is a chance they get those guys back in practice. And, said there's actually a good chance they get both those guys back. So obviously Tavius huge in the run game, and the Ravens just need something. I mean, Tavius was one of the Ravens sack leaders before going down with an injury. So he'd be a big boost to that pass rush group. And then we know Ardarius, what he brings to the table. I would probably temper expectations for Ardarius coming back just because, some guys, it can take some time. Some guys can burst right out on the field and be awesome, back to who they were. But a lot of the time it does take time, like we saw with Keaton Mitchell last year, for example, to fully get that, that confidence back or feeling good and making sure that you're able to be who you want to be. So we'll see again. And that'll be practice windows. So right when those windows open doesn't mean boom, they're going to be playing immediately. I'm sure our Darius will probably have that full, 3-week window. So we'll see on him. And then also in terms of Chandler Martin, I mentioned it yesterday, tore his ACL, and Martin's an ACL injury, ACL repair the next couple of days, Harbaugh said. And so he'll be out till training camp next year. He played a lot of good football for the Ravens when he was out there. So really tough loss for them. I know they already lost Jay Higgins for a little bit. And, also with Justice Hill, like I said, Harbaugh said he has a chance to come back. So that's a 3 to 4 week type of deal, Harbaugh said. So before the end of the season looks realistic for Hill to come back from that neck injury. And neck injuries are scary. So I'm really glad that Hill is all right and is going to be able to make a recovery, it feels like, here for the Ravens. Because again, like, the pass blocking back is important. I'm not trying to discredit that position or say, oh, the Ravens should never play Justice Hill or Rasheen Ali. Not true. I'm fine with Harbaugh doing that, fine with Monken doing that. I just think that there are so many other issues with this offense where, to me, in the short passing game, and this is something, look, maybe I'm just greedy because I wanted to see this for years and years and years, honestly, dating back to when they teased it in 2021, when they were getting ready, I think, to really utilize J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards as weapons out of the backfield. And then obviously they got hurt and their whole offense had to change because every running back was injured. And we got robbed of that. I got robbed of that. I got robbed of my dream of seeing these running backs work in the pass game and be effective weapons there. And it just feels like, with Henry and his ability and Mitchell and his ability, getting those guys on the field and, just running a guy out in the flat or sending a guy out and just sitting down on a route. But, with the way this offensive line is playing, sometimes you do need that extra protection. Obviously, with blitz packages and whatnot, you want to have a guy that's confident out there. But I'm curious about how much they do actually trust Keaton as a pass blocker because of what Willie Taggart said, where he said he was getting better. And so maybe you split that role between Ali and Keaton Mitchell. So you still have some of that dynamic ability on the field, and Ali still gets his opportunities. And I think that might be what works, because it's not just Ali, and all those moments. It's switching things up, keeping a defense on their toes, and still having both those guys work together in a tandem. And obviously you can throw Henry out there on some third downs. But again, I just don't think that's what Baltimore's offense does at this point. So it's disappointing Henry's not getting as many opportunities. Again, I understand game flow and game script and whatnot, but so when you're down, you want your best players on the field. And while game flow doesn't always dictate that, in some situations, especially if it's just for one play, and I get 2-minute plays at the end of a game, you need to, there's no time for subs, but early in the fourth quarter, you maybe want to run a play. Then you can take him out for second and third down, but just to kind of keep him cold on the bench for that long, especially in the early part of the second quarter, was still baffling to me. But game flow will probably dictate a lot more Derrick Henry carries next week. So coming up with the final part of the show, we'll have a Lamar Jackson conversation. There are some interesting stats that were put out, and still conversation surrounding him, because he's pretty polarizing. So stay tuned. We got a lot coming your way on Locked On Ravens. First, this show is brought to you by Aura Frames. The holidays are officially here, which means gift hunting season is on. And if you want something meaningful, personal, and guaranteed to get a reaction, Aura Frames is the gift that delivers every time. It's not just something you wrap. It's a way to share memories, because Aura isn't your average picture frame. You can preload the frame with photos before gifting it. So when they plug it in, the memories are already there. No apps to figure out, no setup headaches, just instant smiles. Now, a lot of people would love this. You got grandparents, parents, newlyweds, anyone who loves photos, and there are endless uploads of pictures and 30-second videos with the Aura app. You can add a personalized message right inside the frame, so the gift feels thoughtful the moment it's open, and packaging comes gift ready. No price tag, no wrapping needed. Huge win. For a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames, named #1 by Wirecutter, by using promo code LOCKEDON at checkout. That's auraframes.com, promo code LOCKEDON. This deal is exclusive to listeners, and frames sell out fast. So order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. Continuing on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher here with you. It is Tuesday. We are here, episode 1652 consecutively here of Locked On Ravens, dating back to 2019 is when I started up this show, and we're going strong. Never miss an episode. And we have that daily Ravens coverage and content for you. So be sure, again, hit the like and subscribe button in video form, and follow along and subscribe in audio form. You can also tell a friend or family member if they want daily Ravens coverage. We're here for them, just like we're here for you. And we also, I got social media. You can follow me over there, Chaos Striker 34, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, the whole 9 yards. Let's talk about Lamar Jackson a little bit. Obviously, he hasn't had a touchdown in 3 consecutive games, and it's been a struggle for Lamar. And whether that is offensive line play, health status, just missing throws in general, it's probably the worst 3-game stretch we've seen from Lamar over the course of his career. And there are a lot of factors that dive into that. And Jonas Schaefer of the Baltimore Banner, he did an awesome job breaking down a little bit of Lamar Jackson. He did a film study article. And so if you haven't checked out Jonas's work, be sure to do so over at the Baltimore Banner. And he talked about some of the good that we've seen from Lamar Jackson and talked about how his arsenal's expanded a little bit. And, he has trusted DeAndre Hopkins a little bit more, which I think Hopkins does deserve other opportunities. Also, we saw a little bit more mobility, and Jonas talked about this too. We saw him, like that Jets game, he just looked beat up. He was looking a little sore out there. I thought he got some of his explosiveness back in that Cincinnati game. We saw a couple of vintage Lamar moments. He was able to get to the edge a little bit more. But again, I don't think he's clearly all the way there yet with, how he feels. Now, Jonas talked about some of the bad with Lamar, which is cover zero management. And, the Ravens and Lamar didn't handle it well. They just started the Bengals just blitzing Lamar over and over and over again. It started to work. It gave me shades of that Miami game back in 2021. And Lamar went 1 for 4 for 7 yards, threw a pick, and took 4 pressures in that, including a sack, Jonas said. So, those failures, like Jonas mentioned in his article, were very consequential. And one of them did knock the Ravens out of field goal range in the second quarter. So just a lot of missed opportunities for the Ravens in this game. Jonas also talked about the accuracy issues for Lamar Jackson and put together actually a graph that I think illustrated a lot of the things Lamar is going through right now. And he mentioned the fact that for Lamar, the fading accuracy issue has been a problem. He said, and the graph shows from weeks 1 to 9, Lamar had a catchable ball rate of 88.9% and averaged 8.7 yards per attempt on unpressured dropbacks. Since week 10, the accuracy has plummeted to 77.3, and his yards per attempt has fallen to 6.8. So there are just a lot of things going on with Lamar right now. Again, I don't know if it's just the health situation and he's just going to have to deal with it and figure out how to play with it. He mentioned it's kind of his first time dealing with that. He also is a very low mistake player, but, at the end of the day is, he's had problems with the turnovers. And I think to me, this over the course of obviously the Cincy game is the one we're talking about here, but it's just very rare to see Lamar have that many negative plays. And the fumbles are just like, the one where Falele and Rosengarten can't pass off a stunt, Lamar gets hit, ball comes out, that ball where he's throwing it forward, ball just comes out, just really weird. And, if Lamar plays like this, we can just be honest, the Ravens aren't winning many games and they're not doing anything in the postseason, probably not even getting there. They need a better version of Lamar Jackson. They need a better version of their offensive line, need their top wide receivers to step up more. 2 for 6 is not anything worth writing home about here. It's just it's a really, really tough situation for them. And now with the Ravens, their strength of schedule, I mentioned this, 6th hardest schedule left in the NFL. You got the Patriots, the Packers, the Bengals, and the Steelers twice. Their competition in the division, which is my only path to making the postseason, the Steelers are at 23rd hardest. Bengals are at 27 hardest. So you're going to have to really step up here. And again, if they do end up going on a run and winning a lot of games here, I think it's a great test for the postseason, a great tune-up for the postseason, because if they do win games, they're going to get there. Because the Steelers don't look great. The Bengals are going to have to fight back. The AFC North is a mess right now. And I think in order to do that, Lamar has to find his mojo and groove again, which, again, is not a very hot take here. But it's not just on Lamar here. There are so many different issues, so many different things that, we can talk about with this Ravens team. So I don't know what's going to happen. This NFL season has been so weird, not just for the Ravens, but for everyone. And in that spirit, I think we're in for an even weirder postseason with, weird teams that make it and weird teams that don't. Hopefully the Ravens, though, are on the good side of that and they do make the postseason, because I think that this year, literally any team that makes it can go on a run, particularly in the AFC. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. On the way, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button in video form. You can follow along and subscribe in audio form for 5 days a week, plus more of daily Ravens coverage coming up tomorrow, or Ravens content here on Locked On Ravens. So be sure to stay tuned, and I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.